Haverty's Furniture is here to help you get set for the season with up to $1,000 off. So you can set the stage with style and set the bar more beautifully. So why not settle in together on a new sofa? Because being at home doesn't mean having to settle for less. Even though the holidays feel a little different this year, Haverty's Furniture can help you create the perfect holiday setting with up to $1,000 off plus 0% interest.
OBS Job Search Advice Radio, episode 1948. I'm your host, Jeff Altman, the Big Game Hunter, and welcome. Actually, today's show is from Career Move Secrets with Tony Talbot. He's a UK-based search professional, and I did an interview with him about 2 weeks ago about networking and leveraging your network. And we speak as two veteran recruiters having a candid conversation about how to be more effective with networking and a bunch of other things too. Hope you find it helpful. Hope you enjoy it. Listen to the show. Give it a great review, please. It's about a half-hour long. Audio quality is very good on his side. Mine isn't quite as clear as his. That's what happens sometimes when you record with Zoom. And with that, let's get going.
Welcome to episode 26 of Career Move Secrets. Today's guest is Jeff Altman. Jeff is known as the Big Game Hunter. He's a career and leadership coach who's worked as a recruiter for more than 40 years. He's also the host of No BS, Job Search Advice Radio, the #1 podcast in iTunes for job search, with more than 1,900 episodes, I hear. Hi, Jeff. How are you?
Fabulous. Thank you.
Excellent.
Good to have you on.
And whereabouts are you in the world, Jeff? You're obviously in the States somewhere, but
I'm in the U.S., in North Carolina, in a small town in the western part of the States called Asheville.
Wow. And what's life like there at the moment? Are you on lockdown in any restrictions, or is life relatively normal?
It's always complicated during a time like this. For us, we don't have anywhere near the cases that the major cities have. Mm-hmm. But we still have a few thousand people have been affected. We have fewer than 100 fatalities in the area. Good. So low risk, but both my wife and I are high-risk individuals. So we've had to make choices about staying in lockdown and being very cautious rather than put my wife, for example, at risk, who had heart surgery during this time.
Wow. Yeah. Definitely. My radar would be right towards the reduce the risk scenario there. So I'm glad you're doing the same. Jeff, obviously, I've researched you, and I came across you a number of years ago. Particularly for your podcast, which is well known, and as I say, lots and lots going on there. But of course, my listeners might not know so much about you. So could you give me the sort of career history, if you want?
I started recruiting back in the Stone Ages when dinosaurs roamed the earth. It was in the early 1970s where I stumbled into the career in search by answering an ad in a newspaper with the headline of Management Trainee Inexperienced Preferred. And started my career at that point, started my first business a year and a half later, sold it to someone, or sold my interest in it, to someone, started another firm. It was like a boutique operation for a while. But all told, I've worked in search for more than 40 years, filled more than 1,200 full-time positions, plus consulting assignments. Along the way, I became interested in doing it differently than a lot of others. And with that, developed a practice that was really geared toward delivering things to job hunters that they normally weren't getting, which in the States, in New York, during a lot of that period of time, it was a difficult business. And I fully transitioned into coaching a few years ago, where I no longer do search, but I take all the knowledge that I have from working in search, from my master's in social work, from my postgraduate training at the Institute of Modern Psychoanalysis, and construct strategies and tactics for people that advantage them throughout the process. So I'm a little bit complicated for the typical recruiter. It's not the usual background. And I also started the podcast almost 10 years ago. In November of 2020 will be the 10th anniversary of the show. It's a 7-day-a-week podcast. I also started doing video, which you can find at JobSearch.Tv.com, with thousands of videos about different elements of job search designed to help people. And as I said, now I coach. I have a number of books out, but I've pulled back most of the job search books recently because I found that they were dated. I have the first one in a number of years that's going to be out later this year about interviewing, and there are going to be others that I'm already in process with that will be following. So
that's very interesting, actually, and it raises an interesting point because you've been in recruitment twice as long as I have, and you raise that issue of keeping things current. You must have seen an awful lot of changes in the recruitment piece and in job searching, how people go about the whole thing. There must have been an awful amount of change during your time.
Well, yes, and the one thing that hasn't changed, interestingly enough, is that networking remains the primary way that people find work.
Yeah.
I joke about it, when dinosaurs roamed the earth, but back then it was called the Old Boys Club. And the Old Boys Club had men in advantaged positions using their relationships from university and other places, from social class and other venues to advantage themselves in search. Now it's been extended beyond men to women as well, and we call it networking. And in networking, that still remains the primary vehicle that people find work. So that's the unchanged part of this. So much of what's changed relates to how we communicate, how we deal with our clients. And again, I'm out of the search business right now, so I'm working from the perspective of what I'm hearing from others, the amount of data that's available, and how we process data. Because back in the day, data existed on a paper resume in a file cabinet that you would attempt to remember someone's name or rummage through a file drawer to find someone. And I remember buying my first PC, in the 80s, and discovering how easy it was to locate talent. Now, you still had to qualify it, and that part of the recruiter's job remains interesting because there are different ways that you evaluate and assess talent before you refer it to someone. And of course, on the client side, there are differences as well. I'm not sure how your business is, but when I talk to others in the US, I find many of them deal with issues, and again, it depends on the nature of the search firm, that the executive search firms for whom the personal relationship remains pivotal. And of course, there's the contingency firms where so many of them have been commoditized. Because, and this is true of many of the executive firms as well, the database for everyone has changed. We've progressed from the file drawer to the personalized corporate applicant tracking system to LinkedIn.
Yeah.
And for me, LinkedIn, I was member 7653 on LinkedIn.
I checked that out. Yeah, I saw that on your profile, and I thought that was really interesting because I was a bit later to it than you, but it's changed the game, hasn't it? Entirely. And it's provided great opportunity for us as recruiters, but also for individuals who want to showcase their capability and be found for interesting things.
And that's really the big difference with LinkedIn, is the capacity to be found more easily and to create a reputation/brand for yourself that allows people to recognize you as being the leader in your segment of an industry, so that search firms of all sorts can reach out to someone. And you can create your own myth around based upon your profile.
Well, we're all experts now, aren't we? I mean, everyone can present themselves, and to some extent, it's true. If you do something repeatedly, you know more about it than the next guy. You are an expert, but you've got that ability on LinkedIn to present your expertise and to project it, as you say. And I still find it very, very. I find it strange that people don't use it to its full extent, that they went down the route of having a profile, but they don't invest in the profile. And maybe they feel that some people will say, oh, if I do invest in my profile, my employer will know I'm looking for a job. People aren't that switched on to it. Everybody is updating their profile because you should do. It's a live database, isn't it? It's the most. I always found that was the most interesting thing for me. In search, going from a situation where the database was always out of date the moment you produced it, to a situation where it's self-edited and publicized by the people in the database. I just found that was crazy.
You bet. And one of the things I love for that individual is a little bit frightened. Turn off your privacy settings so that your connections are not notified that you've made a change.
Yes,
because
of course.
There's software that many companies use in the United States that uses one of the signals of activity as an indicator that a person's looking for a job.
Wow.
So once they have that signal, they know that you're looking. And the simplest way that they know that is you make a change to your profile. So just turn off the privacy setting for notification to people that you're connected with. And after you've made the change, after you've written the article, you can change it back. It's that simple.
Yeah. I make quite a few changes to mine, so I've always had that off, because you would be constantly updating people if you were making just little changes to the piece. So yeah, it's important not to have those bits turned on. God, one thing that really frustrates me while I'm on my soapbox, have you noticed this thing of open to work and that type of thing? Previously it was open to opportunities, and yeah, if you actually search by that terminology, I did it just to see for my own peace of mind. It was roughly half of the people who say they're open are not open, because they're not open to any connections. They have the on their profile, the area where you can actually connect to anyone. They have that turned off and have it on private, which always makes me think, if you want recruiters to actually connect with you, not many of them are going to use an InMail, which is a paid credit, in order to reach somebody that they don't know that much about yet. People need to realize it's an open networking environment. You can always reject somebody's approach, and feel free to do that, in a nice way. But you're missing out on so much if you're not genuinely open to connections.
So true, because years ago I heard a wonderful statement that I've said ever since I heard it. The person who gets ahead isn't the smartest or work the hardest. Those are great qualities to have. People get ahead by being alert to opportunity. Sometimes they're internal to their organization, but most of the time they're external. And if you are not responding to recruiters, both corporate and third party, if you're not checking the platform with any regularity, you're missing so much.
Yeah, I couldn't agree more. In my headhunting business, I've always found, generally we headhunt around the 6-figure mark and above, but on occasion I get asked to there'll be something strategically important or, particularly hard to find profile, often, with some sort of technical capability in there that they must have. And I'll get asked to do a search around that. And I always find it incredibly different between the senior people, the ones who have made it, who are incredibly open to opportunities, listen to them all day long and evaluate them and very kindly dismiss them if they're not right, but they are open, no question about it. Your boss is open. And then the mid-ranking or sort of people that are not quite at that level yet are more often closed, or a lot of them are. And it doesn't take a genius to work out why you're not at the top of the pack, because you're literally turned off to opportunity. And most decision makers are not. They're very open to opportunities. We're that's what being in business is. Being opportunistic in many cases.
My show is called No BS Job Search. And I'll simply say, for the mid-level people, they've been buying the BS their management has been giving them for years. Don't talk to those recruiters. They're just evil. They're awful individuals. Don't talk to them. And every time there's an inappropriate contact, because there are a lot of recruiters who are not particularly capable and they're not invested in a career. Every time there's an inappropriate contact, it reinforces that myth that recruiters are not capable. versus the leaders who've already developed relationships, who are always in the position of being open to options. Like there's a wonderful guy I was working with who's an American working in Singapore, if I'm not mistaken. And he was referred to me because he was going to start exploring a position stateside. And the first thing he did was contact the search firms with whom he'd had a relationship from the standpoint of hiring. Open the doors there, see what was available to them. We started to broach his network, and he started to have some fabulous interviews. And all because one day he decided to reach out to me, and I encouraged him, go out on a few dates, see what happens.
I say the same thing, Jeff. I often say recruitment's like dating. You know, it is that sort of, you have to let the other party know that you like them for them to like you back. And initially it is all about liking. You know, it's not particularly more complicated than that. Even in, you know, we're getting into interviews now, but even in the most senior of interviews that I've ever put forward, where, you know, we're talking about two big hitters, you know, both, you know, on several £100,000 each. It's not any more complicated at the end when you take the feedback, that it always starts with whether they liked them or not. And that, yes, a part of it is I like that person for the job, but it's also actually that I like them as a person. In fact, it's more that it's that likability factor. Yeah, it's not as complicated as it needs to be. They need to know who you are. They need to know that you're interested. So, you know, nobody gets a date if they're not out there, do they? They don't get an opportunity if they don't think. If somebody doesn't think you're open to an offer, they won't make you one.
Are you suggesting that people should cheat? My goodness.
No, not at all. No, not at all. Not at all. No. My wife doesn't listen to this, but, you know, we've been married a long time, so no, there's no problem there. But no, dating. If I knew, I'm out of my depth when I talk about dating, having been married for 17 years. But I try to make the analogy. In fact, I did one for a group of students recently at the University of Westminster, and I was trying to explain to them that they're all into their apps, but none of them are into LinkedIn. By the way, we did a poll at the university, and they're not really engaged with LinkedIn at all. And you can understand that, because if you're a student, you know, you've not reached that level yet, the world of work, and it's not an interesting platform for you. But I try to explain to them, again, I was on loose ground here because I've not ever used the dating apps, but I'm aware of them through friends, you know, Tinder and things like that. So I said, imagine, you know, really LinkedIn is your Tinder, but instead of getting dates, you're getting interviews and offers. And that seemed to the analogy seemed to work. So I left it at that. But you've no doubt seen more changes in technology and what have you than I have, because I remember the days where, you know, you did get you know, you put a post, you posted an advert in a national press, and you got 200 applications, and you literally looked through that pile and evaluated one each on their own. And of course, the one on pink paper did stand out. But now, as we both know, it's all digital. You have to stand out in a different way, and that's probably partly through your LinkedIn profile, because almost every recruiter, whether they're internal, external, or even a hiring manager, they will cross-reference your application, whatever way that might be, or even you're reaching out to them via your LinkedIn profile, and they place a value on what they see. They make a value judgment on what they see on your LinkedIn profile.
I believe you had a recent guest on who pointed out the foolishness of people who have a LinkedIn profile and a resume that are not congruent.
Yes.
And it happens all the time. It's
the
most astonishing thing. And when I was doing search, the first thing I would do is go to the LinkedIn profile. And well, actually the second thing, the first one was I checked my own database because I had a substantial one, and I was always fascinated by the jobs that had disappeared.
Yes, me too.
And you know, it's so easy to expose, shall we say, mistakes that people commit.
They should be. I hear other people saying, "Oh, they're completely different documents. You know, they're completely different. Your CV to LinkedIn profile." And there is some, you know, for people who aren't looking for a job, they are perhaps trying to sell a service through their LinkedIn profile or whatever. Yes, there's an argument to say that what you're projecting is, and it is a network that's not just about recruitment. Now you can project something else, but in terms of the the career history that it asks you to provide, that should be the same. And in terms of the level of seniority that you had, that should be the same. The great advantage for job seekers on LinkedIn is you've got so much more space. You've got 2,000 characters for each job that you've undertaken, and if you fill those out thoroughly, then your profile becomes richer, more searchable, and more expert at the things that you actually are an expert in.
Yes, and you can also create links to content that you create. So if you write or treat it as a blog, it will be linked to your profile. If you share video or podcasts, it becomes linked to the profile, which gives people a perspective of you much more rich than the flat resume might. And so people make these mistakes all the time of not really thinking strategically about a career. And it's that absence of forethought that causes them to lurch with their network from job search to job search without any cohesive strategy, without maintaining relationships, without building an image, brand, reputation for themselves that's public, which to me is the missing ingredient for a lot of people. They're not public enough with what it is that they do and what their successes have been. So they're invisible. They become the well-kept secret, as I believe one of my recent podcasts was. And no one should be a well-kept secret. You should be known, because we live in a celebrity culture, right?
Yeah, the age of narcissism, it is certainly the case. If you want opportunities to come your way, you definitely need to be available to be found for those opportunities. And I think LinkedIn is very much the marketplace now to be found as an individual for whatever it is, whether you're selling something or you're selling yourself in terms of a job search. It is the platform, the platform of choice. What would you do today? How do you see things as different? You've obviously, Jeff, lived through probably a number of recessions. I'm guessing you guys, your numbers on employment look pretty bad. I think they're bouncing a bit, but probably similar to here. There's going to be a situation where in that sort of classic advertised job space, there's going to be, less advertisements and more people chasing them. I talk about the hidden job market a lot, which just means jobs that are unadvertised. And I haven't advertised a job in 10 years. And most people in search don't advertise their jobs because it just doesn't work. We like to go direct. What would you say to people who are, searching in today's environment? What would they do differently, or what would be the sort of key things that you think were going to help their job search?
So I'm going to speak about today. And today in the United States, we've gone from 14% unemployment to 8.4, I believe the number is, which is a pretty dramatic drop. And it will be even more so when some of the large states like New York and California finally allow their states to open up. But I wish I didn't believe this, but I think part of that's political, that those are Democratic governors who don't want Trump to appear as though he's done better than he has. So they keep the numbers of people unemployed, restaurants and other professions high. And New York City itself, I believe New York State itself has announced that they can open up to a limited degree September 30th, which translates into the numbers won't be publicly available until after the presidential election. I wish my mind didn't work that way, but when you link certain data together, it does create an impression. So for the immediate period, what I'm finding is there are many advertised positions and there are many unadvertised positions. I've helped a number of coaching clients find work, including people who were unemployed preceding COVID. And then, of course, COVID collapsed everything. So the idea is to be available, to put yourself out, use your network of relationships to start talking to people without coming across as being one of those people who's just give me. I need. And be someone who recultivates relationships with people that you haven't been in contact with for a while. From there, I'm going to also think longer term and say you have to start thinking about whether your job is going to exist in the next 5 to 10 years with the impact of AI, and start planning now for some of the changes that will occur. If folks start reading material from the World Economic Forum, the U.S. looks pretty complicated in the next few years. The degree to which people are machine learning or AI capable in the U.S. is pretty small. And in many professions, that will disappear based upon the impact of AI and machine learning. So folks need to start being proactive as to whether or not their career will be impacted by this. And start laying a plan for yourself. Now, you can see me. You can tell I'm not 24 anymore. I'm going to be able to ride this out. But for a lot of people who are younger, I would say probably your age and younger, it's going to be pretty tough to ride out the next period of time until retirement, given some of the changes that are being forecast. So be proactive with this. Get the training, develop the experiences necessary to rebrand yourself, even if you have to pay for it, which is always a very painful thing for people to hear, but your institution is going to do it.
Yeah, I think you've got to invest in yourself. It's amazing, isn't it? There's a big difference. Again, you see the people that invest in themselves, invest in their professional and personal development. They tend to do well. People that don't and aren't willing to tend to sort of stand still. So there is, it is a mentality change. But I find that people, will lap up anything that's sort of free, but when it comes to something they need to pay for, sometimes they're less likely to go for it. But there's definitely a sort of correlation between the two, in my view. Invest in yourself and you will reap the rewards. That's how it works.
Yes, and for now, for job hunters, you have to put yourself out there. This is the time, because as we're recording this, we're close to the fourth quarter of 2020. And my experience is if you're unemployed as it enters into 2021, you may lose your career, because firms start to wonder whether or not you were capable and why didn't you get back to work when things started to open up. So for many white-collar professionals, as we call them in the United States, that $100,000 a year person and above, if you're out of work come 2021, it's going to be hard for you to re-enter. So the push really needs to happen now. And as we're recording this, it's almost a time where calendar year corporations start to finalize budgets in the United States. There's still the possibility where you can get written into a budget from a friend of yours who might be in a leadership role. This is a time to make that connection and see if you can get yourself written in. And if not, just stay in touch, because the next wonderful period of time for networking is fast approaching, which is the end of the year with the Christmas holidays.
Let's hope we can all mingle at that point. But take your view. There's certainly a lot of people out there who have, come out of a big role and are having a period of transition, as we call it. But they have to stay active. That there is a full-time job there for them in finding their next job, but there may also be other opportunities where they can keep the skills relevant and stay relevant and stay visible by doing pieces on LinkedIn, of course, but also getting involved in other people's projects, maybe in a limited way, maybe doing some non-exec type stuff. All of the things that keep the skill set going, maybe develop it further and keep you visible. I think that those guys who are out and have been out of an organization for a while, really need to do that as much for their own peace of mind as anything else.
Yes, and I'll also mention the physical part of this. Many individuals, when they've been out of work for a while, put on some weight. The clothes don't fit as well. They don't appear as well on interviews, whether on camera or in person. So watch your weight, folks, and make sure your wardrobe is appropriate. Because no one cares for that look of the clothes that just don't fit properly.
It's all part of your appearance, isn't it? In these situations where you do get an interview. how are you finding that a lot of the interviews have gone to this Zoom method? Have you any thoughts on that, particularly in light of people not always getting the opportunity to meet up directly?
Yes, and I'm finding more firms, once they've qualified someone, once the hiring manager has spoken with the individual over Zoom, many of them are saying, we'd like to meet with you. We'll create a distancing protocol to ensure everyone's safety. Fine, wear the mask, no problem with that. If you feel comfortable at some point taking it off, we'll have you quite a few feet away from us. And the later stage interviews are occurring in person. Early in the COVID lockdown, when things started to open up, I had hiring done purely over Zoom. No one met anyone. I was helping one of my wife's nephews land the job, and he's starting work with a government agency. He hasn't met anyone except over Zoom. So firms are experimenting with whether or not they can return to a degree of normalcy. And it depends on the organization, what their comfort level is.
Yeah, I was lucky enough to do some recruitment just before the lockdown here, or actually moving into it with an organisation that were involved in renewables, wind farm development, and they interviewed everybody through Zoom. In fact, in one stage they had the whole process, 3 interviews occurred within the course of a week. And an offer went out, and that person started and still hadn't met anybody. And I think probably, until they were in post for a month, they still didn't meet anybody from the organisation. But they did feel part of it, because there was lots and lots of interaction over Zoom. And this particular company did a very good job of integrating the candidate, regardless of not having them in the office. So yeah, it can work. It does happen. Any final thoughts, Jeff, on anything that you would suggest that people should be thinking of if they're in the difficult situation of trying to find their next role right now?
One thing I always remind people of is that the skills needed to find a job are different than those needed to do a job. And particularly with regard to interviewing, most job hunters are complete amateurs. Yeah. They go to interviews and they wing it. A U.S. expression that basically translates into they figure out the answer in the moment. And I don't know how it is in other sports, but in every U.S. sport, all the great athletes practice, and every great entertainer rehearses, and every job hunter goes on interviews, and the first time the words ever come out of their mouth, the first time they've ever answered that question is at the interview, and then they wonder why they don't get the job. You can't act like an amateur. Professionals do things that other people don't do, and they're able to demonstrate them at the drop of a hat. You have to be that person who practices, rehearses, and can deliver spontaneously without appearing to be rehearsed. It makes a world of difference.
Yeah, couldn't agree more. It's amazing how I think most people wing it. We use the expression here too. They think their sort of innate talent will take them through. But of course, if another person is there who has practiced, the classic sort of tell me about yourself, and they can tell you tell somebody about themselves in a coherent, compelling way that only lasts, say, 3 minutes. And has great impact. That's a big difference from somebody who sort of ums and ahs and makes it up on the hoof, and it doesn't really come across as compelling or as interesting as a well-practiced story. I always say that there's a good example. If you've got a really great story that you tell your friends, the first time you tell it, it's funny, but the 15th time you tell it, you're killing everyone, aren't you? Because it is, you've honed it. It's now a well-used tool, and of course your personal value proposition, your tell me about yourself answer, and indeed some of the pieces around your particular skill set, leadership, whatever else, you should have some well-honed stories that you're very, very good at telling, and the reaction you're going to get from your audience each time you bring those ones out. So that's another great example, Jeff. Yes, thank you very much for that, Jeff. I really appreciate your time and your enthusiasm, and for coming on the show. Really great. I was really pleased that you said yes, and having concluded the conversation, I'm really, really, really grateful that you came on.
My pleasure. Glad to serve your audience. And folks, I'll just simply say in conclusion, if you want to find out more, JobSearch.TV.com will take you to my YouTube channel on an Amazon set. So a Fire TV, a Fire Stick, Roku, look for the JobSearch TV app. You can watch me there. If you have a smart set, download the JobSearch TV app as well. There are 90 some odd TV platforms around the world that's available. And of course, No BS Job Search Advice Radio.
Perfect. Yes. All of those, all well worth taking in. So please do that. Jeff, thank you very much for your time. Appreciate it.
That's today's show. I hope you found it helpful. And if you did, here are a few more ways to get information and advice from me. First of all, visit my website, which is thebiggamehunter.us. Go to the blog. There's a lot there to help you with your job search, hiring more effectively, managing and leading in workplace-related issues. In addition, if you're interested in my coaching you, there's a button there that says schedule. Schedule time for a free discovery call or schedule yourself in for coaching. Obviously, I'm going to charge for that, but I can help you with interview preparation, leadership coaching, salary negotiation advice, making a good decision between different offers, anything related to improving yourself in the workplace, I can coach you about. If you have questions for me, you can schedule 15 minutes with me at thebiggamehunter.us/live, or a less expensive way is at thebiggamehunter.us/video answers, where you leave a message for me and I'll respond with a 3 to 5 minute video. Connect with me on LinkedIn at linkedin.com/in/thebiggamehunter. I can assure you your network will expand a lot by connecting with me. And finally, watch me on TV. Download the JobSearch TV app for Fire TV, Fire Stick, Apple TV, Roku, like 90 different manufacturers. I'll be back tomorrow with more, and in the meantime, I hope you have a terrific day. Be great!
You're very welcome.
All the best.
Total Wine & More is a wonderland to explore. Thousands of wines and spirits, unexpected pairings, and great gifts. Low prices and helpful guides make the holidays magical at Total Wine & More. Drink responsibly. Be 21.
Ace is the place with the helpful hardware, folks.
This Thanksgiving, think outside the oven and get Thanks Grilling with Ace. Get a new grill and choose from top brands like Traeger, Weber, and Big Green Egg to add even more flavor to your Thanksgiving turkey, side dishes, and desserts. Plus, right now, get free assembly and delivery on all grills and accessories $3.99 and up. For the best help on the best grills, stop by your local Ace and get Thanks Grilling. Ace Rewards members only through December 24th. See participating stores for scheduling or exclusions.